Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to our Ritual Night Talk for December 21st. I'm Scott Stenwick, your host for these Ritual Night events, presented under the auspices of Leaping Laughter OTO in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about the Middle Pillar Ritual, which technically it's not an Aleister Crowley ritual, it's an Israel Regardie ritual, but it is one of the rituals that I like to start beginning students out after they learn the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, which we covered last week. Before I get too much further, if you like these videos, remember to like, subscribe, request notifications. That way you will always know when we post a new video here, whether it's an upload or a live stream, on the Leaping Laughter YouTube channel. I have included a link to Hacking the Middle Pillar, which is the title of an article on my blog that discusses the Middle Pillar ritual. And I've also added the donation link. All donations are appreciated. No donations are too small. And everything donated goes to support the operation of Leaping Laughter OTO here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, many people do the Middle Pillar. This ritual was originally published by Israel Regardie in a book of the same name, The Middle Pillar. And Regardie wrote that he adapted the ritual from another ritual that was developed by Robert Falcon, he thought, of the Stella Matutina. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that version after I go through the generic version of the ritual. The Falcon version was a version where you would actually take a single god name and you would move it down the middle pillar in the aura. And Regardie looked at this and came up with a modification to make it a more general ritual. So what you're doing is you're taking the Sephirothic points in the body of light and you're vibrating the corresponding god name from the Golden Dawn Thelemic version of the Tree of Life at each point as part of a daily practice. So kind of like when I talk about the lesser rituals being general and the greater rituals being specific, Regardie has this general version of the middle pillar, but there also is a specific version that he apparently based the general version on when he was putting together the ritual. It's been published in a lot of places. Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig, that's where a lot of people learn the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram and the Middle Pillar Ritual. And so it's one of these things that's out there. It's used a lot. There are some variations of it, but the basic idea is pretty simple. Now, this ritual generally will follow something like the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram. So you can precede it with the banishing version of the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, or the invoking version. And so if you're doing, like I discussed last week with the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram, you're doing an invoking form in the morning and you're doing a banishing form at night, you can actually add the middle pillar to both of those. And what that's going to do is it's going to add, it's going to help more, again, to fortify, your body of light. It's going to help, which is your aura, your sphere of sensation, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's fortifying you in a microcosmic sense. And it is microcosmic because we're preceding it with the Lesser Ritual of the Pentagram. Next week, I'll be talking about the Lesser Ritual of the Hexagram. And once you add that, that starts to move it into macrocosmic space. So it starts incorporating some of the energies of the exterior world. But microcosmic energy is important. Most types of energy work actually happen within the body of light. So like if I'm doing Qigong, and I'm going to breathe in, and I'm going to project something or whatever, that's primarily a microcosmic thing, even if the result is energy that can affect the macrocosmic world. The source of it is fundamentally my aura, my bodily energy. One of the things that breath work does is it forces more oxygen into the bloodstream, and literally it increases neural firing. And so you actually, there's real energy that's being expended there. Your brain actually will expend more glucose and so forth when you're doing this kind of Qigong breathing and breath work. And, Qigong practitioners, teach that then, practitioners can emit qi and so forth. And there have been some Chinese studies that talk about how the difference between like a novice and a Qigong master is they can apparently measure like infrasonic vibrations, like coming from the hand or something like that. I had another article on that quite a while back on the blog. But Anyway, the point is, though, that this is fundamentally still working with your body, working with your aura, working with your bodily energy. So doing the microcosmic form of the middle pillar is not necessarily, it's not like, you're imagining it in the sense of it's simply psychological. What it is you're just basically activating these energetic centers on your body using these particular names. So I'm going to start out here by just kind of running through how the ritual works. There are a series of God names that you vibrate at different points on your body. I like to hold my hands at the point of vibrating when I do it. Not everybody does that. I do Qigong, so I do this tiger mouth thing, facing each other. I like that myself. But it can also just be completely visualized. So what you're going to do is you're going to vibrate the God names down the front of the body, and then you're going to do the step at the end, which there's a lot of variation in that, where you circulate the light. And basically I do it as a simple form of Qigong breathing. And so I'm just going to show you what this looks like first and then I'll talk about some of the individual points. So, each of the God names, Rigardi says vibrate 3 or 4 times. I like to do it 4 times in the context of daily practice because of the fourfold nature of the lesser pentagram and the lesser hexagram, which precedes it. They're based on this fourfold structure of the quarters. So I kind of like to think of it synchronizing with that, vibrating the names 4 times. Eheya, 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 eheya. Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Eloah Vedat, Yahweh Eloah Vedat, Yahweh Eloah Vedat, Yahweh Eloah Vedat, Shaddai Elkai, Shaddai Elkai, Shaddai Elkai, Shaddai Elkai, Adonai Melech, Adonai Melech, Adonai Melech, Adonai Melech. So basically, that is what the ritual looks like. So, point at the top of your head. The God name is Eheya, and you want to focus on a sphere of white brilliance kind of just around the top of your head. That corresponds to Kether on the Tree of Life. The next point is Yahweh Elohim at the throat. You want to visualize that in bright lavender. And Yahweh Elohim is actually the God name of Bina, but Bina stands in for the supernals at the Da'at point here, according to Crowley. And it is visualized in bright lavender to reflect the explosiveness of the energy of Da'at. Yahweh Eloah Veda'at is the God name at the center of the chest. That corresponds to Tiferet. You should visualize that like a golden ball of light. Shaddai El-Kai, down at about the level of the navel. A little bit below the navel, actually. So if you're holding your hands like this, your thumb should be about at your navel. This is Shaddai El-Kai, and it is visualized in violet. And finally, the God name at the feet, which is a ball visualized in black, is Adonai Melech, according to Liber 777. And that's one of those little thelemic changes. Most places that you're going to see are, and including Rigardi's original, the God name for Malkut that he uses is Adonai Haaretz. Whereas in 777, it's rendered as Adonai Melech. Since I go off of 777, that's the version I use. If you like Adonai Haaretz better, and that's fine too. It's not really a case, where it's not really like a testable case where, you can really easily compare the two. And it doesn't seem to make a huge difference in how effective the ritual is. But it is one of those things that, okay, so if you're doing the God names off of Liber 777, well, then that's what you would be doing. What would be Adonai Malek rather than Adonai Haaretz. Now, I do two things circulating the light, and there's a bunch of other things too that people do in different places. So I do this one, which is called the fountain. And so what you do is you raise the energy up and just kind of bring it out to the boundary of your aura through the top of your head. Then you just do that again. And you want to breathe that. So you breathe in as your hands come up, and you breathe out as your hands go down. You don't necessarily have to sweep that wide. I just like to do that. And so I do that 4 times, again, to line up with the fourfold symmetry of the daily practice. And then the second one I do is the orbit, which is a specific Qigong practice, actually called the microcosmic orbit. You can find it in the work of Mantak Chia and some other authors if you want to look at like deeper context behind it. So how that works is, again, hands are down, and you raise your hands up, and you bring energy up the back of your spine, then over the top of your head and down. According to Qigong teaching, you want to do this with your tongue touching the roof of your mouth, breathing in and out through the nose if you can. For years, I had a terrible sinus problem, and I had to just like breathe through my mouth if my tongue touched the roof of my mouth because not much air went through my nose. That got fixed, and I can do that correctly now. But back in the day when I was learning it, it was kind of challenging. But don't let something like that dissuade you from trying it. So you're visualizing you're visualizing a warm energy coming up the back of the spine, cool energy going down the front. And you cycle it around the body like that again 4 times, and finally I just join my hands. I do it like, this is something I learned from my Qigong teachers, makes it look like yin yang down here at the lower dantian. But that basically is the ritual. Now, there's other stuff that people do, like you can do like swirly, twisty things with the energy, and if somebody do like they twist it this way and then they twist it this way, and all of that stuff is stuff that you can do, and it's stuff that there's movement of chi associated with that, and if that feels like a thing that builds your energy, works with your energy, that's great. But keep in mind that the circulation of the light step is fairly freeform, and it's not a case where, well, I have to do the fountain, and then I have to do the orbit, and then I have to do the twisty thing, and then I have to do this other stuff. But you don't have to do any of that. I mean, if you know a Qigong set, you can even just do the middle pillar and then just do your Qigong, your regular Qigong set that you happen to know from studying Qigong. That's another thing that you can do. The moves here are very similar to basic Qigong moves, and they are really about moving the bodily energy around, just like what you're trying to do in Qigong. So really, that's kind of it in the sense of, just how the ritual works, how it's generally done. Now, and it makes a great daily practice. Again, it should follow the lesser ritual, the pentagram. I did not do that here. But in the context of your daily practice, you should do that. Then do your middle pillar. If you want at the end, you can kind of seal it with another Kabbalistic cross. Ata Malkut Vega Bara Vega Dala Leolam Amen, and I did that kind of out of sequence, but like that. And you could do just a final Kabbalistic cross, just like you opened your lesser ritual, the pentagram. A lot of my students find that kind of seals in the energy and kind of seals the practice. Alternately, you can do the middle pillar, go into your meditation, and then finally, when you've completed your meditation, like I talked about 2 weeks ago in the daily practice video, then you can seal that with the Kabbalistic cross. So it's pretty straightforward, and you will find that doing this ritual should really help kind of center you, ground you, move your energy around, and that's really kind of what it's supposed to do. Now, there's a couple of other things about this ritual that are points that you might see some differences here and there. First and foremost, I pronounce Yad-He Vav-He as a word, Yahweh. Or you could do it Yehovah. Rigardi's original version was Yehovo. And the point of it is, vibrate as a word, don't spell it out. I'm not a fan of spelling out God names like a lot of people do today with Yad-He Vav-He and actually vibrate the letters. But when you're vibrating the letters, just as I mentioned in the lesser pentagram, it's not, it's like, you're not really vibrating the word of power. You're vibrating the letters of a word of power, and it's really not the same thing. So what you're going to have is at that point, in my experience, it seems like the energy raised around that God name as, it's not really balanced with the other ones that are vibrated as words. And in this case, there are two of them in the middle pillar. So you have Yahweh Elohim and then Yahweh Eloah Da'at. And yeah, don't get that confused thinking that, oh, Da'at is the throat, but this one says Da'at. Yeah, that's sometimes confusing for beginners. But the point is Da'at here for the throat, but Da'at is part of the God name for the Tiferet point. Now, some other stuff that you could do with this ritual. So first of all, you could use different God names. You don't necessarily have, especially if you've got your copy of 777, you don't necessarily have to vibrate the Kabbalistic Sephiroth God names. You can work with other God names. In fact, personally, I work with the 11-fold seal, which I'll discuss that in another video, probably related to Liber Regulae, which is where the 11-fold seal comes from. And that actually works with the Thelemic God names. And so I use that rather than the middle pillar in my daily practice. And there's ways that you can kind of expand it a little bit to make it similar to do a similar thing to what the middle pillar does. And so, but you can take a look at your 777 columns. And all right, so top of your head, Kether point, that's scale 1. You may have to come up with something for this Da'at point because that's not on the scale. Tifereth is 6, and then Shaddai Al-Kai, which is Yesod, that is 9, and then Malkut is 10. So if you look at those scales, you're going to find there's some other deities there. And if you want to find a deity that is related to like the throat, like particularly like the Vishuddha chakra, which is this throat point, you could take a look at, you could find stuff like that. Regardi, to some extent, probably put this ritual together because people wanted some kind of a ceremonial magic thing to work with chakras, because there's a lot of the Eastern-Western syncretism going on there. Although, to point out, the 11-fold seal actually addresses chakras directly, and that's a much earlier ritual than the middle pillar. So, at any rate, so that's one thing. You can use God names corresponding to these points. You can even look at the chakra points. It's like, okay, so, the top of the head, that's the Sahasrara, the Vishuddha, Anahata, and then Svadhisthana, and then Muladhara. Although 777 Crowley does associate both Yesod and Malkut with the Muladhara. So depending on how you want to go with that, I probably would, if I were creating a modification to it based on the chakras, I would probably separate them. So I would attribute Yesod to the Svadhisthana, and then the feet, Malkut, to the Muladhara, if I were going to do it that way. But anyway, so that's one thing that you can do. You can come up with, if you've got different gods that you work with, you can look at different god names that you're activating in your aura. Just make sure that the attributions are basically sound between them, and, try it out, test it, see how it works. The other thing that you can do, and I don't use this a lot, but I have a couple of students who do use it and like it, is that you could look at trying to do the original Falcon middle pillar, which, okay, you kind of got to reconstruct it, because Regardi talks about it, but I don't know that there's a reference to it specifically in any of the Golden Dawn papers. Probably a Golden Dawn person could correct me on that if there is, a Golden Dawn paper on the middle pillar. But so what Falcon's version did is, so if you were working with a particular kind of energy, so he would take a particular god name, like, so let's say that you wanted to work with, Tifereth energy. Well, you would use the god name Yahweh Eloah Da'at, and you would visualize that name at all the points. And I would say visualize it in gold, and I would say vibrate it 6 times, because, well, okay, so 6 is the number of Tifereth, and then gold is the queen scale color of the Sephira, And queen scale is like the default or natural color for Sephiroth, whereas king scale is the natural or default color for Paz. So, and you could do that in the context of a ritual working with your own aura in kind of the same way that you can work with the ritual space with the greater ritual of the pentagram. So the middle pillar is a great generic preliminary invocation for practical magical work. And so what that does generally is that identifies you with the forces of the divine. You can also use the 11-fold seal, same way. You could also use a version of your own design, calling out a different deity or set of God names. That's fine too. But then when you're getting into your working, okay, so once you're past that general step, what you're doing is you're going to want to tune the space, tune yourself, tune something to the energy that you're going to work with the spirit. So you're doing Sephiroth work. Okay, great. So take the God name Yahweh Eloah Ve'Da'at, and then, go ahead and go through the same process. I'm not going to demonstrate the whole thing. But then do that, circulate the energy. Be sure to visualize the energy in the proper color for what you're doing. And then you can go into your conjuration. And according to a couple students of mine, that works just fine, even if you don't do the greater ritual, the pentagram or hexagram for the force you're working with. Generally, I don't work that way. What I will do is I will use the 11-fold seal, or I will teach students to use the generic middle pillar as a preliminary to doing practical work. So then, the full sequence would be lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, talked about that last week. Lesser invoking ritual, the hexagram, I'm going to talk about the lesser hexagram next week. And then the middle pillar. And so just like your regular practice session, right? So this is modular, and you're going to know this because you're doing it every day. And then once you've done your general middle pillar, you go ahead and do your greater ritual, the pentagram or hexagram for the force. Then you do conjuration, charge, license to depart, just like you would with any other kind of spirit work. And then finally, you would close it with either repeating the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, or simply by using the Kabbalistic cross, which is if you're going to conjure energy that you want to seal into your aura and your sphere of sensation. And so a version of that might be you could do the lesser pentagram, lesser hexagram, some kind of another generic invocation. Crowley sometimes would use he used the Bornless ritual, which is an adaptation of the Stele of Jehu. You could do something like that. That's a good generic invocation of the divine when used in that context. And then you could go into doing a version of the Falcon middle pillar with then the God name that you're going to be calling the spirit by. So you're going to call up your Sephiroth spirit. Okay, so you're going to do Yahweh Eloah Ve'Da'at all the way down. And then you're going to be, oh, thou spirit, so-and-so, I conjure you by the name Yahweh Eloah Ve'Da'at, to appear, and so forth. And so that's how you can integrate it into practical work, this older version of the ritual that Regardi was talking about. I have seen some discussion online as to whether Regardi was actually embellishing something about that. I'm not sure if that's true. And that really is more a question for people who are more Golden Dawn experts than me. So pretty much when you're working with the middle pillar, that's what you're doing. And let me just add one more point about energy work, because energy work is super important. You could sit here and you could do these ceremonial forms of, I'm going to trace a pentagram and say a name. You can do that. But you're not going to find that it's very effective magic. What you're going to find is you're just kind of reciting something. If you take your energy and you put it into what you're doing, and like I talked about with the lesser pentagram, you could do that with trace and then do the sign of the Emperor. That puts energy into it. Or you could do like I do, more of like a Qigong kind of thing where I'm breathing in and breathing out and vibrating as I trace. The point being visualizing the energy out here. And that energy is really, I think, probably the secret of magic, that people talk about it in books and stuff like that, but they don't always talk about exactly how to do it. I did ceremonial magic for years before I studied Qigong, and I found that, wow, you put this Qigong stuff into your magic, all of a sudden all this stuff works better. And so The middle pillar is a fairly simple way to do that within the Western ceremonial magic, corpus context. It's a ritual that if you talk to somebody who's a Thelemite, they probably know what it is. You talk to somebody who's a Golden Dawner, they're going to know what it is. Even people who just are interested in reading Regardie know about it. Whether or not they practice a particular system, and so on. And so it's a good generic practice to get going. It's a little bit simpler to learn, I think, than the 11-fold seal, which has some movements and stage directions that are a little more complicated. And it is possible, too, that, Regardie was actually looking at something like the 11-fold seal, because Crowley wrote Liber Reguli quite a few years before Regardie ever published the middle pillar and so forth and talked about this exercise. But it is important to really sync when you're doing this. The vibrations, breathe in fully to your diaphragm and vibrate. I ran through the vibrations kind of fast. I cast kind of fast. You don't have to do it as fast as me. It's better if you're going to do it actually to just take, a full complete breath and just like vibrate the name, each time that you do it. And so the ritual takes a little bit longer than what I demonstrated. So, I didn't do the full, really absorption into the ritual because in the video context, it winds up looking really slow on video when you do it like that. But, full complete breath at each time. Visualize the color, kind of a ball of light. I like to visualize it kind of like a stack of billiard balls. You get a ball here, ball here, ball here, all the way down, and they kind of stack on top of each other in your aura. So I like to think of it that way when I'm doing the visualization. And really, the big thing is with the circulating the light, that's a very generic step that you can do. It's a fairly simple step that you can do. And you can make it as complicated as you want. If you've got stuff that, works with your energy, if you do martial arts, you could do like a martial arts thing in there. The point of it is you're going to bring the energy down and you got to circulate it, in whatever way works well for you. And in doing that, in developing capacity for energy work, at the outset of your magical practice, you're going to find that you're going to get better a lot faster than somebody who winds up, doing this stuff and then learning it later and trying to cobble it in. And take that from somebody who did learn it later and had to put it in. I very much wish I would have started out, knowing more about, how the energy work stuff operated when I was a beginning magician. I think that I would have been, a lot more successful at that time. So with that, I think I'm gonna sign off there for tonight. Go ahead and practice the middle pillar ritual. If you're just starting out, go ahead and do your lesser invoking ritual, the pentagram, in the morning. Follow it with the middle pillar. Do the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, at night. Follow it with the middle pillar. If you want to start with one, start with the banishing, move on to the invoking. And if you stick to that stuff, and you do this stuff daily, like I said last week, you're going to find that that's really the core discipline of magic. Sticking to this stuff day in, day out, and that's what's going to allow you to develop as a functional and effective magician. So with that, thank you all very much for watching. And here is wishing you a great rest of the evening. Love is the law, love under will.